out with my father and his old my uncle. We just went out for the weekend. We were just scouring around for some deer, and we were walking up over a little embankment. It was just on dusk, but it was still probably maybe an hour of a good light. We were like walking around and we could hear something, like it was running, but it was like heavy footsteps just running and just really weird sounds. Basically, we're coming over this little hill and we're looking down into the valley and we see this thing. I seen it first. It was just near a tree. It was just standing there, and if I didn't happen to just look at it the first time, I probably wouldn't have seen it. I just looked down and I seen something. I'm like, what's that? And then it kind of moved. It moved a little bit. And I said, Dad, look down there. There's something down there. Just look. And I'm pointing, and my dad's looking, and then he looks, he's seen it, and then his face just, I've never seen my dad like that. And we've all seen it, and it was standing there, and it was just looking at us. It was probably 40 metres, 50 metres away. We were on this little hill, and it was down in the valley a little bit. We were going to walk down, and I don't know if there was one, if it was just this one, or there was another one close to us, but we heard that, and then it stopped. And I don't think it was this one down there, unless it was really quick and got down there.
All three of you see it. Then what did it do, and what did you do?
It literally just stood there, and we did nothing. It was almost as if I was like paralysed, mate. My uncle pretty much just was shaking, and he's big. And we just stood there, and it just stood there. It just stood and was looking up at us. It just stood there. We didn't know what to do. My dad and my uncle had 30-30s, like they're big guns. I just had a 22. I wasn't looking. I was just scouring for little rabbits and stuff. Probably looking at it for a good 3 or 4 minutes, and then it just turned around casually and just walked off through the scrub.
This thing is downslope from you? It's down in the valley?
We're walking up this hillock or whatever. It's just a little hill. We were going to go down, and then it was rising up to this bigger hill, and it was just real dense at the bottom. It was like a little valley. You can't really see much other than pine trees and just a lot of scrub.
It was in amongst the trees?
It was right at the bottom of this hill next to a tree. The only way I recognised it is I just happened to look down right at it. Once I got to the top of this little hill, as we were going to go down, I looked down and I seen it. For about a minute I was silent. My dad and my uncle were talking, and I just happened to say, Dad, and he looked down. And he couldn't see it, and my uncle couldn't see it for a bit because they were like, what are you looking at? And I'm trying to point, I'm like, look right there next to that tree. And then I'm looking at my dad's face, and he's looking, and then he sees it, and my dad just went white. And then my uncle seen it, and my uncle was shaking. And we were there for about 3 minutes looking at it. It just stood there looking up at us.
So you've got this thing in view for such a long time. Just describe the thing to me in as much detail as you can.
It was about, it could have been 40, 50, 60 metres, but we seen it. Like, it was big. It was, I don't know, 8 foot. Its chest, its shoulders were massive. It was like, its arms were like, the proportion was all wrong. They came down like to its probably below its knees. It was just standing there. Its chest was huge. Its shoulders were probably, mate, I can't really give you a proper exact estimate, but it was about 8 foot tall, and the shoulders were, it had no neck. I don't know if it was a real dark brown or if it was a black, but it was dark. It sounds crazy. It was so far away, but I could see its eyes were one of its most distinguished features. We all seen it. At the time, you wish you could have like a camera or something. We didn't do shit. Its body looked obviously like you hear when you hear people describe a Bigfoot, but its face was The only thing I just describe it of is when there's that movie Harry and the Hendersons. It wasn't like that. It wasn't like a coned head. It was like just a rounded head. It almost didn't resemble a primate. It resembled more human, if that makes sense. Its face was more characteristic of a human-like face, not a chimpanzee sort of ape sort of face. The face was more human, but the body obviously was not. It was, what we seen was not a man.
This thing starts walking off and possibly disappears. What did you guys do after that?
Stood there for about 5 minutes, just silent. The thing is, I don't think it's just the one. There was this noise, and I was like, what's that?
What was the noise? Can you describe it?
It was like a real guttural. The only way I can describe it was like the sound waves were penetrating my body. It was like I could almost feel it, if that makes sense. It was really high, like low frequency, but it was like high. It was almost like a growl, but it wasn't a growl like a dog or anything. It was, I've never heard anything like that in my life. It was just standing there looking at it. It was the biggest thing I've ever seen in my... It was huge. It was so solid. It was like... The scary thing is, if we didn't see that and we walked down that hill, we would have been standing right in front of it. Those 30-30 rifles wouldn't have done anything to that.